Mr. President, Republicans don't actually have to do this. I understand as well as anybody wanting to go along with your party's president, especially in the early months. But being part of an independent and co-equal branch has to mean something. Being part of the Article 1 branch means something very specific, and it means that we're the legislature and we control the purse strings. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say that if the president wants something, you must do it. And what worries me the most about this rescissions package, if it passes, it is one thing for the president's signature accomplishment, signature policy priority to be supported by Republicans in the legislature. I understand that. I understand the inevitable political momentum behind that. But this isn't that. And we have now gone 6 months without a single instance of Republicans and Democrats coming together and establishing that there are some limitations on this president's power. And if you remember the first Trump term, there were a couple of moments when the legislature actually stood up to the president, overrode a veto of his, rejected a rescissions package. They stood up for their prerogatives. And you know what happened next? Nothing. Why? Because that's actually how the system is supposed to work. We are not a parliamentary system. We are not a monarchy where the president says by tweet, if you don't adopt this exactly how it's written, you will not receive my political support. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And that set us on a course towards passing this legislation, which I know at least a dozen Republicans hate. It reduces funding for Jordan. It reduces funding for Ukraine. It reduces funding for global health. It did reduce funding for PEPFAR. It continues to reduce funding for public television and public radio. By the way, public radio is not just national public radio. If you are on a reservation, if you are in a very rural part of your state, it's often not just the only radio station, the only communications infrastructure that exists in a rural area. So it's the only platform for news, that's true. It's also the only emergency communications infrastructure because still many places across the United States lack internet. And so Mike Rounds got his deal so that his tribes will be taken care of, and I'm glad for him. But there are 49 other states where your emergency communications infrastructure is about to be defunded. Nobody likes that. Some people are pissed off about NPR's coverage or PBS's coverage. Come on. You defund an agency because you disagree with their editorial choices? Which country is this? Which country is this? I want to tell you something a little technical, but I think it gives away the whole game. So I'm the top Democrat on the Foreign Ops Subcommittee. What does that mean? We do funding for USAID and the State Department and a few other things. When we do the appropriations process, we get letters from every other member. They're private letters, and a lot of people sign them, and they say, could you please give more money to whatever it is, maternal and child health, or malaria prevention, or the PEPFAR program, the initiative to prevent HIV/AIDS transmission. So we get a bunch of letters saying, please plus up this, please plus up that, bipartisan letters. And we are trying to write a bill that accommodates all these needs. A lot of people who are about to vote to cut all the stuff are on the side writing me a letter saying, please increase these accounts. And why does this matter? This matters because nobody's voting. I shouldn't say nobody. Many, many people are not voting their conscience tonight. And that's just a fact. There's a characterization in poker when you know you're beat and someone puts money in on the river and you call anyway. It's called a crying call. You give away your money sort of crying. This is a crying call. This is a, I know I'm beat, I vote aye. And here's the thing. We don't actually have to do this. President Trump's attention is famously divided. And if something pops next week, he will be on that thing next week. He did not wake up every morning thinking, I want to defund UNICEF, I want to defund PEPFAR. His attention will be divided, and the moment the legislature stands up for himself, usually what he does is he understands power, and he says, okay, those guys are asserting themselves, they're a co-equal branch of government, and I'm going to have to move on from this. Because, why do I know this? We literally did the same thing. There was a rescissions package which nobody remembers. Why? Because we quietly, with Dick Shelby and others, appropriators all, said, nah, we hold the purse strings here. We write the laws that determine appropriations. We're not going to do this thing on a bipartisan basis, enact a spending plan, and then come in on a partisan basis and say, you know, that wasn't actually the spending plan. That was just the spending cap. And the administration is going to come in and do whatever it wants on a partisan basis. And so what happened is they rejected the rescissions package on the motion to discharge, which is happening in about an hour and 5 minutes. And then you know what happened? Nothing. Nothing politically, nothing substantively, except that we kept the appropriations process alive. We kept the filibuster alive. We kept bipartisanship alive. And in this instance, it's not just about this institution. It is literally about people being kept alive. For the last 5 months, because of the United States' actions, tens of thousands at least, maybe hundreds of thousands of babies have gotten HIV/AIDS from their moms because we pulled funding. Because Elon Musk had some bug in his ear about USAID, and one weekend he said, we're going to feed this thing to the wood chipper. And because Democrats, too, and pundits decided, you know what, foreign aid isn't so important to voters. I don't care if it's important to voters, if it ranks on the number 1, number 2, or number 3. We're the United States of America. And one of the reasons that we have such a strong reputation is that we do things that are right because they're right. Not because our voters are going to reward us immediately, not because we get some geopolitical advantage, but because we're the damn good guys. And right now, we are ratifying a bunch of decisions against our will. We don't have to do this. Donald Trump will move on to the next thing tomorrow. And if it's not on this thing, which has low salience for the voters, is 18 months from the next election, if it's not on this, at what point are my Republican colleagues going to stand up for this branch of government? I remain ready to work with anybody on anything. I have talked to Chairman Graham about the possibility of literally enacting these rescissions, or at least a portion of them, in the State and Foreign Ops mark. And yet, they choose this legislative violence. We don't have to do this. We don't have to operate under the assumption that that this man is uniquely so powerful. He's the most powerful president. He owns the legislature in a way that no president has ever owned the legislature. And we all act like we're just sort of observers, like clicking on the TV and seeing how our fantasy football team is doing this Sunday. We have agency tonight. to reestablish that we are the Article I branch of government, and that means something. I yield the floor.